In this video, I'm going to show you how to customize Zoho so that you can get the most out of it. It doesn't matter if you're a $100 million company, a solopreneur, if you're in B2C, B2B, B2G. I've done this over 141 times for over 141 organizations in over 16 different industries. And this is the method that I use to automate my clients' businesses and get them the most out of Zoho. People get so excited about Zoho, especially Zoho 1 with 46 applications. They start to develop it. They add all the applications. They start using these new features that are coming out. They use Canvas View, all these things. And then they realize they're not getting anything out of it. And so they start to think, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm in over my head. Then they reach out to me as an expert and they say, Drew, we're trying to get the most out of the software. We've made a big mess. We don't even know what we're doing. Or some people are really wise and they're like, I'm probably going to do that. So I'm going to go to Drew first. And I take them by the ankle, they're floating up there, and I just bring them down to earth. And the way that I do that is with documentation. I've noticed that my clients hate creating documentation too, so I actually create it for them. Because what they usually do is they'll try to go for some visual format that looks nice, which admittedly I've done. It just doesn't work. These visual formats aren't information dense enough. They don't have enough information to base an implementation off of. That's the first problem. The second problem is you're never going to modify this thing over time, right? You may think, yes, I will. I got my Lucid Chart subscription, and every time there's a change, I'm going to go and do that. Why make more work for yourself? You're not going to do that. Problem number 3 with any kind of visual representation of processes is usually, even if you do it in BPMN 2.0, which is a business process notation of flowcharts, even if you do it perfectly like that's documented, not everyone else in your organization, even if you're a solopreneur of one and you want to document things so that you can later bring on more people to your team without saying, go ahead and figure it out, which you should do, you're assuming that if you know BPMN 2.0, everyone else is going to know it too. So this becomes a huge problem. It's what are we going to do first to base our Zoho development / implementation off of? Okay, I've seen every single format under the sun for doing this, because a lot of people come to me and they're wise and they want to do their homework before they come. This is the best way to do it. And what I suggest that you do is look through this documentation. This documentation very closely mimics other organizations that have helped implement Zoho. This one's a B2C example. Also have a B2B example. Those will be in the description. So if you want to check those out, you can scan over them to get a feel for how this documentation is supposed to look. The first thing that might shock you here is it's not visual. It's written requirements. Think about a movie. Think about a pilot. Okay. When someone goes to start a movie, what's the first thing that they look at in order to determine if the movie was designed well? Let's say it that way, designed well. They look at a script, right? This is a very visual thing. You go to a movie for a couple of hours. It's very visual. But what do they base it off of? They base it off of a written script. Think about a pilot. Before they lift off, what do they go through in order to determine that they're ready to lift off? They go through these written check boxes and they check them all off. Okay, so it's not absurd for you to write down your processes before you get started. And this is the tricky thing, is your processes are probably not optimal for Zoho. And so then you got to play this translation game. So what I suggest to you is before you go buck wild with going through every single step in your business, I would list out the most important processes that you want supported by Zoho and some of your general objectives. I would just write it out in bulleted format. Don't go crazy with the documentation quite yet. Bring that to a Zoho expert, and they should be able to translate into what I call who will what format. And this is a format that can double as a Zoho action plan and as a Zoho SOP. I say SOP and people will just cringe. Like, I know I'm supposed to be creating SOPs, but I just never do it. SOPs are what is going to allow you to offload and delegate to other people. It's very critical. I have a video that goes in depth on it for Zoho Learn if you want to check it out. And you never have to, if you're a business leader or a business owner or an organization leader, organization owner, I don't want you creating SOPs. I want other people creating SOPs for you. So go ahead and check out that Zoho Learn video if you want to see more on that. But who will what format is great. Let's just take a section of this process as an example. Okay, so Website visitor submits a form regarding a B2C service. Personal training, plastic surgery, catering, lawn care, house cleaning. Do you want to track requests for a service and close B2C deals? If yes, review this section. So website visitor submits a form. Team member will qualify the lead and convert the lead to a deal. Team member will connect with the contact to close the deal. Team member schedules service. Team member says, this is a universally understood format, okay? Team member will use Zoho inventory to track inventory and packages. And then the question becomes, well, how detailed is this supposed to be? As a general rule of thumb, you want about 20% of the steps to give people 80% of an understanding of how to execute a process. And on top of that, when I do this for clients, I have them talk, I document how a process should look so it's optimal inside of Zoho. And at the very end, I include a video at the top so that they have a very detailed step-by-step example. But sometimes they don't want to watch a 20-minute video and jump to the exact timestamp to look at how am I supposed to use Zoho. And processes will change over time. So the nice thing about this is it has enough information to base a Zoho implementation or development initiative after it has enough detail to base that off of. Number two, you can change this over time very easily because it's in bolded format. It's written. You can just jump in, tweak the processes over time. And then number three, if you make the video at the top, there's always enough detail to give you the gist of the process, but the most updated version of that will be below. And that's exactly how I build out my SOPs for my clients as well. So the nice thing is when a client comes to me, they're like, we don't know how to get the most out of Zoho. I'm like, tell me your processes. As they're telling me their processes, my little supercomputer is translating their processes and how it should be optimally inside of Zoho. And then they have a essentially code for humans on how to use Zoho for their organization. Looks like this. I also give them some visual representations too. I'll give them these diagrams. But the more important thing, because I mean, how helpful it is to look at this list of applications. It's kind of cool, but when you actually have to use the system, it's just not going to be very actionable. Okay, so you want the most actionable form of documentation. I should know because I've done this over 141 times for 141 organizations and across 16 industries. So this is universally understood by people. They should be able to read through this and get a good idea. Also, it's great if you have a video on top of this to guide people through. And then last thing, again, to wrap this up, if you want to go ahead and create this documentation to the best of your ability and bring it to someone great, but then you have, you're just going to make more work for yourself with the expert that you work with. So I recommend initially just having a first pass with an expert. Of course, I'm a little biased because I'm a Zoho expert, but I've seen so many people try to do this and they get frustrated and then they end up coming to an expert anyways. And it's usually more work to break down a system that's been developed incorrectly and build it back from the ground up than it is to just start from a blank sheet of paper. Okay. So my biggest recommendation to you, if you have rose-colored glasses when you look at Zoho and you're really excited about it, the first thing you should do is write out some of the critical processes, some of the apps that you find interesting, and then in some of your objectives there, goals, challenges, very vague, maybe 10 bullets. You can get detailed if you want to, but you can keep it pretty vague. And then go to an expert, and they should be able to prompt you in a way that's going to extract the detail that's actionable for a Zoho implementation or development initiative. One of the concerns that my clients will have is they'll have their processes here and they'll say, I know I'm not doing this perfectly, but here's my processes, Drew. Can you take a look and then optimize this for Zoho? And they're super embarrassed. I've worked with $100 million companies who have really embarrassing menial, not automated manual tasks. And I've worked with solopreneurs who do this. It's okay. Zoho experts are not here to judge you for your processes. The processes just inform of what you're trying to accomplish so that we can take that and then translate it into Zoho optimal processes, which Zoho apps you should be using, the features, etc. Okay? So that's the first thing. You're in a good position. You're not in a bad position if that's what you have to offer to a Zoho expert when you begin the conversation. I've even had clients that are way more vague, and they're like, we just want to set up the Zoho apps that make sense for our business. Okay, so they don't even have processes they're trying to support, and then we have a package to say this is a baseline of implementation of Zoho with the apps that 99% of Zoho 1 or Zoho customers will use, and this is how they need to be integrated and set up at a baseline so you can even get started with the system. So what I'm trying to say to you is, don't feel like it's like you have to have this level of detail and documentation to be ready. Even if you have embarrassing processes, that's even better, because more likely than not, an experienced Zoho expert will be able to draw upon all these other organizations who have used Zoho and give you optimal processes so that you can do less and accomplish more inside of the Zoho platform. Detail is everything when it comes to Zoho. There is so much nuance with building a system that's as complex and as wide and as deep as the Zoho platform, that when you are working with a Zoho expert or consultant to build a system, or if you're even going about it yourself, you need a lot of detail on two sides. One side is you need a lot of detail for processes. The other side is you need a lot of detail in understanding Zoho as a platform. Think about it this way. Every time you learn something about processes, like, we can do it this way, for support, we can have an email and then it translates into a ticket, and then we can assign the ticket. For sales, we can have a form on the website, and then when they fill out the form, it marks as sales ready and it auto assigns to sales rep. Or I'm a solopreneur, and so I can schedule my posts through Zoho Social and then put UTM parameters, and it sends over here, and then I can track exactly where it came from. Every time you learn one of those things, that's like a business process that you can throw into your deck of cards, and those are business processes that you have. So then you have this giant deck of cards for business processes. On the other side, you have your deck of cards for understanding Zoho, right? So there's a feature here inside of Zoho can do this. Zoho Analytics can have a data sync with 50 plus applications. And then you start to add more and more to both deck of cards. And then from there, it's just this game of match. You have these processes, and then you have these features and apps. You have these processes, and then these features and apps. And that's where you want to get to, because if someone has a I'll just tell you my exact frustration. I'll see Zoho experts on YouTube and they'll explain something really vague and really general, and I just sit there and I'm like, anyone can make a 5-minute video of Zoho by watching other 15-minute videos of Zoho. It takes a real expert to know detail about the system so that they can discover the processes in an organization, that deck of cards, they can extract that, and then they can match that up with a giant deck of cards that they understand about Zoho. And that's where true expertise lies. And that's really what you're paying for if you go for professional implementation of Zoho versus doing it yourself. And if you have a really deep understanding of the Zoho platform, you can get away with that too. My argument would be, if you're going to start something, Zoho is only as good as its implementation. And an implementation is only as good as the person implementing it. And I also believe that it's not worth implementing Zoho wrong, because it can do so much damage. Not just Zoho, by the way, any CRM. If you implement it wrong, it can do so much damage to the organization. I'm like, do it right, be willing to make the investment, or just don't do it. That's my argument for it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't go and get Zoho. I'm just saying, if you're going to do it wrong or half-ass it, just know there's a huge drawback to doing it that way. And then it's more expensive and more timely to then fix it later with an expert. Building Zoho live with the client. So this is a practice that I've seen in different Zoho experts. It's something that I was really drawn to and then kind of realized the flaw in it. So live Zoho building is what you probably imagine. You hop on a Zoom call as you're explaining things are being built. But this is where you can get into a really dangerous spot in Zoho, where if you build as you go, you have tunnel vision and you can't see the overall strategy for the organization. And so it can be useful in some circumstances, but you don't want to skip the discovery piece. The discovery piece is getting what's in your brain out on paper like this. Okay, that's discovery. So what I'm saying is, you want to be really careful about jumping into developing Zoho before you have some kind of comprehensive written out plan for what you're doing. So it's like a good, better, and best. It's good if you can get in and develop Zoho as someone's talking, but then you'll inevitably, even when you're doing that, and I've done this, so I'm speaking from experience and I learned from it, and now we do what we do now, which is a much better way of doing things, is when I would do a working session with a client, they're explaining things that I'm built, then we'd come across something where I'd have to wait. For example, I mean, this is just probably something you could guess. Get on a call, and they're like, this is how we want to run our sales processes, and I'm customizing fields, and they're like, and this is the kind of reports that we want. And then I'm like, okay, well, And they're like, this is a kind of dashboard that we want to mimic from another software. And I'm sitting there like, okay, the data sync from Zoho Analytics and Zoho CRM is going to take like 10 minutes. And then once that happens, I have to make a SQL query table, and that's going to take maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, maybe an hour, somewhere in that range. And I'm like, and our call is 2 hours long. So I'm like, or maybe the call's an hour long, or maybe it's 30 minutes. And I'm like, so I'm going to sit here and we're going to wait for the data sync. I can't do that live. So it's better if you can extract a lot of this information initially onto paper, and then this isn't something you have to worry about, but then the Zoho expert needs to look at this and say, okay, I need to play this game of match for all these things that we discussed. And then what I need to do is schedule these sessions within a period of time so that I can dedicate my focus to these different development items. Okay, so that's the proper way of doing it. Again, it's a good, better, best. It's good if you can do live building of Zoho. If you have very simple requirements, which you may think that you do, and then a lot of times people don't, they think there's something easy to do in Zoho that's actually extremely difficult, then working sessions can work great for very, very simple requirements and systems. 99% of the time, if you want to get the most out of Zoho, and those are the people I deal with, is we want to get the most out of this platform so that we can get a good return on our investment. We're more productive, so we do less and accomplish more inside of the Zoho platform. We consolidate our entire tech stack, and we feel that Zoho's working for us. We're not working for Zoho. Those are usually the people that I'm attracting and working with. So that's the people that I'm talking to when I use this. That's kind of my ideal viewer that I'm out there talking to. So to wrap this up, the important thing to understand is that if you do live builds, that's great, but it's more ideal if you can design it first. Just in the same way, it'd be like making a movie. Think about it this way. It'd be like going to lift off inside of an airplane and saying, let's just invent the checklist as we go. Maybe you should build the checklist first and then go through it instead of saying, this would be a good item. Oh, what do you think, sir? Okay, yeah, that would be a great one. Ma'am, what do you think we should add on here? Oh, we can do this. And then you just start building lists as you go. That'd be like piecemealing the whole video instead of designing how movie is going to go. Instead of designing it with the script at first, you just, as you go through the script, you build it. That just isn't a good strategy. It just doesn't make any sense for me. Some people do it and they say it works, and then I kind of look at their systems. I'm like, it looks really janky. It looks like it was duct taped together. So that's the thing I want to get across in this video. That's a concern that I'd like to resolve for you. In one of my earlier videos, I go over this journey map, which I think is great, but this is an old way that I've done things. The new way is what you're seeing here. Okay, so I'm going to tell you the reason why. The old way doesn't have enough detail to base the Zoho implementation off of. And the way that I get these stages, right, because this is just at the stage level, when you are looking at any kind of business process, you have 2 degrees of detail. You have the stage level, and then you have the steps level. So steps and stages are different. Oftentimes you'll go into a system, you'll see a Kanban board in the deals module leads or whatever part of the system you're in. You'll see 1,000 different Kanban stages. That's because people conflated or combined their understanding of steps and stages. They didn't separate them. Stages are the general phases of a process, where steps are the detailed things, the actual actions that happen inside of a process. Well, you need this level of detail to actually get one of these stages onto a document. So instead of having people start here, I take them all the way down to square one, back to square one. And that's where we start with this, because you need this in order to get a journey map. Now, this is optional. I used to require these for clients so that everyone could have a shared understanding of what each of the stages meant. And I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it's absolutely critical to the implementation success. The more I've done this, the more I've realized how important it is to be clear on how the system should be used, so that, because we can set up Zoho perfectly, but if we fail to provide clarity to you or the other users of the system at any level of use for the system, they're not going to get anything out of it. So it's all for nothing if people can't use the system. The way people are able to use the system is if there's clarity. And the way that there's clarity is if there's detail. If you are general and vague about everything, then people can't act on it. People can't understand what you're saying. And so you need detail. So starting at the detail level first can then inform all of these more general or vague styles of documentation. Okay, so get to brass tacks first. Just bite the bullet. Have a Zoho expert that'd be willing to do it for you. That's what I would do. If I was you, I'd be like, I don't want to waste my time trying to guess how this works. I'm going to have someone do it for me who's done it 100 times, 100 plus times. But again, I'm a little biased, so you're going to have to evaluate that for yourself. But the principle here is you used to have this journey map documentation. So if it's confusing, why isn't Drew talking about that? It's because now I've moved over to this because it's significantly more detailed, provides more clarity, has people use the system in a better way possible. And so that's out with the old journey map, in with the new. Another concern that many of my clients will have when creating this is you don't want to get over engineered. Okay. And there's a balance here. And the balance is between two principles. One principle is it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And that is true. What's also true is something called Gall's Law. Gall's Law states that a complex working system must grow from a simple working system, and any attempt to start with a complex system before a simple working system will fail. So don't try to make some complex, crazy change in the organization. You must start with a minimum viable system and grow your way from there. And that's what a document like this is supposed to accomplish is and this is a more advanced version, right? Because this is what I use to give people inspiration on how things should be documented and what their Zoho action plan will end up looking like. But just know that this isn't about over-engineering and automating every single part of the business initially. It's about giving you the best minimum viable system to start with so you can begin getting usefulness out of the system. And then it puts you on a trajectory where you can continually get more and more out of Zoho. And so I make this to essentially put my clients on a path of where they have all these Zoho apps, 46, maybe they only use 2 or 3 initially with the initial action plan, but it puts them on a path where they can actually grow with an integrated suite of applications, a consolidated tech stack, which is just lots of business software that connects with each other. And then they can get the most out of Zoho over the lifetime of using it.